Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Wayne Shutsky. I'm the Yellow Sheet editor with the Arizona Capitol Times, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor of this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested primary election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted into the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. When voting in a primary election, voters are choosing between candidates of the same political party, so their preferred nominee may advance to the general election. As the moderator, I will ensure the candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from the voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state asking for questions for the candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to learn what issues are important to them. That survey data, along with input from the experienced journalists at the Arizona Capitol Times, Arizona Agenda, and Green Valley News and Suarita Sun, have been utilized to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. Of course, we also want to hear directly from you, the voters. So if you're watching the debate live, you can submit questions at any time by emailing debates@kc-a.com, texting 480-808-1814, or calling 480-937-1253. Please specify if your questions are for a specific candidate or for all candidates. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, and personal attacks on the candidates. The debate is scheduled for an hour, so we may not get to all the audience questions, but we'll do our best. Now to the candidates. You will each have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between the opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. Both candidates appearing in tonight's debate are Republicans running for the House in Arizona Legislative District 4. We have Jana Jackson and Kenneth Bowers. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name for opening comments, and we'll progress from that starting point. And with that, Mr. Bowers, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Okay, I want to start off by thanking the Clean Elections Committee for making this opportunity available. And to give you a very brief summary of who I am a roughly a 7-year veteran of the U.S. Navy and a 20-year veteran of the Arizona Department of Corrections as an officer. I'm an Arizona attorney in good standing, and I'm a supporter of President Donald Trump. If you want to find out a detailed synopsis of who I am, please go to my website, which is at votekenbowers.com. As an officer in the Department of Corrections for 20 years, I came to believe that there are tens of thousands of young men in prison and hundreds of young women who shouldn't be there. When I retired from the Department of Corrections about 5 years ago, there were approximately 37,000 people in prison in Arizona. Being in prison in Arizona is a rough deal because the prisons don't have compressive air conditioning. They have evaporative air conditioners that work poorly in many circumstances. So as an officer, I was frequently in the position of locking a young man up in a cell that's at 110 degrees. A lot of the prisoners, tens of thousands of them, are in prison for nonviolent crimes. And I've come to believe that our prisons should be for violent criminals to keep them separate from the rest of us. And nonviolent offenders should pay fines to the state and restitution to their victims and never go inside a prison. I hope in the course of this talk to describe to the people who are listening what actually happens to a young man who's sent to a prison. Let's pick an 18-year-old man who commits an economic offense like stealing a car. I don't say that that's a minor crime that can be awfully harmful.
Mr. Bowers, we're coming up on 2 minutes now, so if you could
All right.
could wrap up your opening statements, please.
Okay, that's enough for now.
Okay. All right, Ms. Jackson, with your opening statements, and I'll allow you 2 minutes as well.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me to be able to come onto this program and speak. My name is Jana Jackson, and I'm running for House of Representatives in LD4. There are three main reasons why I'm running. I'm running with God because of God. I'm running for family, and I'm running for our country and our state. School choice is the number one that's on my list of being able to look at and to work as a representative. And a representative is a person who serves. And I am so much willing to serve our parents and our children in this state as a legislator at looking at bills and policies that will be able to enhance our educational system. I'm running also for the first responders and veterans. There are lots of things in which we can support through our legislation for these groups of people. My father was a homicide detective. My son is a police officer, and now my grandson is a police officer. I was born and raised by the Chicago Police Department. And looking at our first responders, knowing that things have changed from when my father was a police officer to now my grandson being a police officer, they need our support, and they need our support in the House, in our state House. I'm also running for small businesses and entrepreneurs. I'd like to see big business come into our state, but I really want to help the businesses that are already here. And I think through legislation, writing proper bills, I will be able to help that part of our state to become number one. My website is janajacksonaz.org. And if you have any questions that during this debate I, for some reason, do not answer, or you need more answers to what I suggest, please go to my website, and I'll be more than happy to be able to sit and talk with you, or I'll be able to write with you to answer any question you may have. My name is Jana Jackson. I'm running for House of Representatives, and the number one purpose for running is to serve our state and to serve the people in our state. And I want to represent you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, we'll move on to the first question, and we'll go in the reverse order. So Ms. Jackson, if you could respond first.
Yes.
Obviously, Arizona's water supply is an issue that isn't new, but is obviously at the forefront right now. As the Colorado River will be curtailed with further cuts expected in the future, where and how do you think the state could find more water, or how could it mitigate its use going forward to conserve supply?
Well, as a science teacher, I didn't give my background, but I'm a science teacher. I actually work for NASA as an aerospace education specialist. I also work for NAVC, which is both the Navy and the Marines, in writing PPP and task-based curriculum. When we look at the water supply and the water that we have here, I have to go back to my experience. I was born and raised in the inner city of Chicago, and Chicago has great water. The reason why we have great water is because we are connected to one of the five major five major lakes in the United States. We don't have water such as in Canada or in Alaska, because we're not connected to that source, that water source. And so when looking at what we have here, the first thing I would say is we need to look to see, where is our water? Do we have underground water? Where is the water coming from? And then for what would we be able to actually contribute to bringing the water and maintaining the water, sustaining the water here in our state? I don't know a lot about the water sources that we have. As a science teacher, I know a lot about where the resources are naturally. So my answer to your question is, I would do my best to make sure that I could intelligently sit with people to see what they want and where they feel the direction of our water supply should be coming from, and what we as a state need to do to ensure that we have adequate water for the people in our state. So I'm not sort of sidebarring the question or pushing the question away. What I'm saying is the knowledge that I have right now of the water supply that we have here in the state of Arizona comes from a science background. looking and knowing quite a bit about the water that comes naturally to our United States. How it is used in our state, I would actually have people to actually give me suggestions and take those suggestions and use the background that I have, the education that I have, at looking at very intelligent ways of solutions. I worked at the state capitol in Tallahassee, Florida as a doctoral research assistant. I worked for both the state house as well as for the Senate. And I realized that I was taught how to write bills, how to properly write bills, how to properly research bills. So this is one bill, because I know that this is top and foremost in our state, that I will be able to go to research, to listen to people, to talk to people, but more importantly, to listen to the people of our state to see what they think that some of the solutions should be, and then pair that with what the experts are saying we should do. I hope I've answered that question for you.
Thank you. And Mr. Bowers, same question to you.
Well, you know, Arizona has enough water for the next 100 years. And the situation with water is going to be solved by the proliferation of cheap energy, which will certainly be available to the human race in the next 100 years. I think we should not worry about it right now. But turning to the matter of young men being in prison in 100-degree heat, for a nonviolent crime, I'd like to make sure that I'm able to discuss that at length.
Well, Mr. Bowers, we'd like to stick, these are the questions that the voters submitted, so we'd like to stick to them. You will have your closing statement as well. And I'm sure I'll be able to allot both of you a few minutes instead of just the one, and you can touch on the, if we don't touch on that topic in these questions, I'm sure you can address it then. But yeah, anything else you'd like to mention on the water question? Okay, thank you. Moving on, another topical issue that's affecting Arizonans right now, was submitted by the voters, is that Arizonans are suffering high inflation rates in the country right now. In what ways do you think that you as a legislator can help ease those inflation pressures on the residents of your district? And Mr. Bowers, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, I think the economy of the state is doing very well. Governor Ducey has brought in a lot of additional business to Arizona, and I would hope that those companies will come here and Arizona will prosper. I don't have any specific ideas of what to do about inflation, except the federal government should stop printing money.
Okay. On a kind of a follow-up to that one, and then I'll allow you to answer, Ms. Jackson. You know, gas prices are obviously a part of this. Would you support suspending the state's gas tax in order to alleviate some of the inflationary pressure on Arizonans? That one's for you, Mr. Bowers, just a follow-up to the inflation question.
No.
No? Okay. And so same question to you, Ms. Jackson. How would you propose to help ease the inflation's effects on Arizonans?
Well, when we look at inflation, we're looking at people either working or not working. So if we're looking at inflation and you're talking about Arizona, I'm not talking about the country, but I'm talking about Arizona and the inflation rate of what we have here in our state. I am for not a hand out, but a hand up to the people that live in this state. That means that we have to be able to get some of our people working and not give so much of a hand out. When I go down to the store and I pass McDonald's and I see signs in the window that say help wanted and they can't get anyone to help, I think about getting welfare checks that are so large that you would not want to work, or welfare checks with food stamps with unemployment. I was born and raised in the inner city of Chicago, where the crime rate is the highest in the country. The rape rate is the highest in the country. Men in jail is one of the highest in the country. And when you start talking about inflation, you're talking about people, you're talking about money that's coming into our state. So when I think of inflation, I think we are a cause sometimes of that inflation. And if we want to be able to lower the inflation, then we have to stop putting money into our state, but put people into our state and allow them and give them jobs so that they can help boost our economy the right way and not the wrong way. Also, you talked about the gas prices. Yes. I'm a teacher. I work in the high school. I teach science in the high school. I try to teach physics and chemistry to freshman students and earth space science to senior students. It costs $30 for me to fill up my gas tank a week. Now it costs $60 to fill up my gas tank a week. My income as a teacher, which is a contract I signed, has not been increased. So that means that that money extra is coming from my paycheck. Now, I'm a common sense person. When you talk about taxes, we don't need to increase taxes. Maybe we need to eliminate some state taxes. And I'm only saying this with just the minimum knowledge that I have of what is sort of common sense. As I said, when I get into the office as a representative, if this is what the people want, I will listen to the people that are the experts coming into this house with no lobbyists backing me, but only people that are knowledge, that are people saying, no more taxes. The state tax is just pulling me apart. I have to find an additional $30 a week to put gas in my car to go to work. So that means when we look at high inflation, I am the inflation. So if you're giving me food stamps, and I'm not against food stamps. In Chicago, when people get welfare, they work. That means that if you are getting paid for 15 children, 10 children, 3 children, or 1 child, you can go and you can work in the schools as teacher aide marking papers, or you can work as a custodian, or you can work as a teacher aide, which I did, or you can work in our parks picking up paper. So I believe sometimes the inflation that we have here in our state is an inflation that we as a state, people here can say enough is enough, and we need to do something to make sure that our incomes meet what they need to meet in our homes. So maybe I didn't answer the question, but I am answering it through my heart. When you look at high inflation, you're looking at something that's affecting people. And we need to make sure that the inflation equals where we are right now so that we are living, cost of living is adjustable for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So since we're on the topic of taxes, Governor Doug Ducey won office pledging to cut state income tax down to as close to zero as possible. Yet voters approved Proposition 208, which would have raised income taxes on the wealthy to better fund education. What are voters telling policymakers when they make these votes, and what rate do you think Arizona should tax income? Ms. Jackson, we'll start with you.
Like I said, when you say what rate should we tax, I would have to have an expert to help me with that. When Governor Ducey said to cut the income tax, I have this thing with my leader. We don't choose our leaders, but if we have our leaders, we're going to work with our leaders to make sure that they can do the best job possible. And I know that Governor Ducey has given X amount of millions of dollars into our school system, additional. He has worked very hard to make sure that our budget is one in which we can actually live with. And so if he suggests taxes being cut, I would have to go with the leader and say, let's take that premise and then let's work down from it. Let's get some people that actually work and deal with looking at budgets and taxes. And let's find out whether or not this is something that our state needs and our state can live and survive and be sustained with. The other part of the question, you said Prop 208. Sometimes people vote, and when they vote, they aren't voting the issues, they may be voting their friends. I have talked with people and knocked on doors, just as Mr. Bowers has. And the people sometimes don't understand what those props are really about. You go down from street to street and there are signs, yes for Prop 208, no for Prop 208, but there's nothing to actually educate the people to tell them what is Prop 208. So sometimes I think we vote maybe because of the stimulus that is given to us throughout mail, things that are being mailed to our home, things that are put into the neighborhood, things that are talked about and not really understand what that is going to mean in the next 5 years. Here in the state of Arizona, we are not working as a legislator. I will not work as a legislator for the now. We are working for legislation in the future. A child that's in 3rd grade will actually be 18 years old and 10. So thank you.
I'd like to give Mr. Bowers an opportunity to answer the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The same question to you, Mr. Bowers. Do you, like to repeat it, or are you good?
No, that's okay. Jana has twice now indicated she would go to a subject matter expert on a various matter. And I want to point out that that's what everyone should do who becomes a legislator. There's nothing in my background that makes me qualified to say what our tax rate should be. Jana Jackson is a subject matter expert on education, and I know a great deal about the criminal justice system and about the prison systems. If I'm given the honor of becoming a legislator, I will find subject matter experts on such matters, and what I'm going to concentrate on is this criminal justice system. This is where what we're doing is atrocious as a state, what we're doing to our people. As for inflation, inflation is a deliberate policy of the federal government. It has been since 1950, and it's not going to change until the federal government decides to make it change. There's nothing that I can do as a legislator to affect that.
Okay. Well, speaking of subject matter expert, as you said, we also received some public safety questions, some criminal justice questions. So we're seeing staffing shortages at police departments in Phoenix and other cities in the Valley. What is, in your opinion, what is the cause of this, and what can the legislature do to alleviate the problem or help alleviate the problem? And Mr. Bowers, we'll start with you.
Okay, these staffing problems among the police are due to the perception that police have that the public is turning against them, and they certainly are. I have just talked about this matter with police officers out on their shift, and they are essentially dragging their feet and doing as little possible because of the way they see the way people treat them. Give the police officer a salute when you pass them on the street. Let them know you support them. And there are plenty of good people who want to be police officers. Being a police officer is a fine job in America. And unless we ruin that job, there's going to be plenty of people that want to do it. The attacks on the police over trying to do their job is absolutely ruinous. So it has to stop.
Thank you. And Ms. Jackson, same question to you.
Yes. Well, the one thing I want to say is when you start talking about defunding, of defunding a group of people, when my dad was a police officer, he had a respect. When people were hurt, when they were robbed, when they were raped, they knocked on my door. As a child, I saw them cry in my dad's arms because he was respected as a police officer. My son became a police officer because of the respect that he saw his grandfather receive. My grandson has become a police officer because he has seen the lack of respect of his father. So when we talk about what are we going to do, the first thing, it's in education, we call it Maslow's hierarchy. You have to have self-esteem in what you're doing. And when you start tearing down anyone's self-esteem, then their motivation to do what they need to do stops. But there's one thing that I'd like to mention within my 2 minutes. There was a child put into a safety car seat, and that car seat was put in front of the parent's home. And then the person in that home shot at our police officers, and they made a choice. Do I wait for the SWAT team, or do we go in and get that baby before a bullet hits it? And you had police officers going and picking up that child and being shot and taken into hospitals here in Phoenix. When we think of what the police officers give, they give their life, just as in military men. Every day, my prayer is that my son will come back to his children safe. And my prayer is that my grandson will not be hurt while he's walking on the streets, even if he's giving a traffic ticket or he's giving someone a ticket for walking across the street. We have to be able to give them that respect back. They have worked for that respect. And the police department has changed. We cannot fund a police department that my father worked on or worked within. And then my son works within. And then my grandson works within, and not give them a living raise. Technology has changed. We aren't using those Apple computers in the police department anymore. The crimes have changed. There are children being taken because they're using TikTok on a cell phone. They're meeting men in the street and they're not coming back. So our police department has changed. And I'm so emotional on that one, but I won't go over my time. But that's what I feel. I think we have to give our officers, our first responders, not just police officers, first responders, a new respect. We need to greet each one, as Ken has said. Ken, that was outstanding. We need to meet them and greet them. We need to thank them. We need to buy them coffee. Think about Norman Rockwell's painting. The police officer sitting on the stool and the young child standing next to him. We've got to get back to those ways, and we can. As a people, we can get back, and we can honor all of our first responders and our Vietnam veterans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the same topic of public safety, do you support efforts to require citizen or other third-party oversight boards to investigate police shootings and the use of force incidents, and do you believe police officers need more accountability to the public? And Ms. Jackson, we'll go with you.
When you talk about accountability to the public, our public has changed. When we look at the technology of what we have, right now, a satellite in the United States can pinpoint a house all the way across the world. We have the technology. So now I think what we need to do is to use some of this technology. When you talk about looking at what police officers are doing, I think the whole picture has to be, what is the criminal doing that the police officer is now looking at? Another example, we allow people that do not live in Arizona to go into Scottsdale. They tore up the stores, they broke glass, they wanted to go into stores, and you have people standing outside their stores with guns. This is before the police officers even arrived. You did videotapes of all of these people. The people were doing something that was harmful. And what I say, and I will continue to say, we don't defund the police and the first responders. We refund them and give them more than what we have given them. And then we give them the technology and the tools that they need to do their jobs. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I think they're bad apples in every profession. But what we need to do is be able to give them the technology and the funding and the sources so that they can do their jobs, because they only have one job. And that number one job is to protect us. And I think that's what we need to do. Give them their respect back. Let them protect us and give them what they need. You have young men making ghost guns in school. In my district, went into the bathroom and shot another student in the leg with the ghost gun because he actually gave him counterfeit money to purchase the gun. So when we look at the crimes that are happening and we want police officers to help, we need to put the police officers back in our schools and fund them. One police officer is enough for students to see. They are not going to do something because the security guard's not going to come. The police is going to come, and he's going to call his buddies. So for me, and I'll stop talking, I get passionate with this.
Yep, no.
We need to make our state. We need to make our state safe.
Thank you. And Mr. Bowers, same to you. Do you support the push to require citizen or other third-party oversight reviews of police shootings? And do you believe officers need more accountability to the public?
I think the officers are doing just fine. They do not need any kind of citizens board. They have their own in-house review. They have the control of the city government, and I would oppose any such move.
Okay, thank you. We received a few questions about the border, immigration, and the role the state government plays in that. So we'll move to a question on that topic. Governor Ducey has already sent the National Guard to the border, and some legislators are pushing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build an extension of the border wall on some limited stretches of state and private land along the border. What do you believe is the state's role in managing the border? Mr. Bowers, we'll start with you.
Okay, I think it's a federal responsibility, and the state government should not be involved. But the fact of the matter is, the federal government has, since the 1950s, refused to control our border. Something has got to change. President Trump was trying to build a wall and trying to get the situation under control. And the federal government has stymied his efforts and took absolutely stop the construction of the wall. We have to somehow force the federal government to get involved in controlling our borders. We control the borders in all over the world, but we don't control our own border. I don't see that the state government can do this. It is a federal responsibility.
Thank you. And same question to you, Ms. Jackson.
I agree with Ken. The border, to build a border, our land is on the border land is on federal land and Native American land. And we cannot build something on federal land or Native American land. If we want to sue the federal government to get the land, then we might be talking about building a border. But you can't build on something you don't own. You can't build on something that does not belong to the state. So I think that this is a matter that, as a legislator, we need to look at how do we approach this so that we can build on land that does not belong to us. We're not going to build on Native American land. So unless the Native Americans say build a wall on our land. And I think Mr. Bowers is correct. We have borders in the ocean that you can't cross over, certain borders in the ocean that we control. We have borders in the air that you cannot cross over in the air. Then that means that we should be able to set up our borders here in the state of Arizona. And there has to be a solution to this. But you talk of building a wall, and I'm all for building a wall. I think that even if each person in this state, if we all paid for one brick, I would pay for my brick to put down to build the wall. But you can't right now because the federal government and the Native American land is attached to what you're talking about building on. So going to that question, that would be my answer. And then I would also seek other people to give me more information on what I am talking about to make sure that I am accurate. And I do agree with what you have said, Ken. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to some issues. Obviously, there's been a lot of election-related bills that have gone through the legislature this year. Some have passed, some haven't. But so do you believe that Arizona's election systems are secure? And if you do not, what are your proposed solutions to improve election security? And Ms. Jackson, we'll start with you.
I think when we look at voter integrity and election-related bills, I think we need to look at that very, very seriously. Right now, there's been a woman that has been prosecuted for vote fraud. She actually turned in her mother's ballot because her mother wanted to vote for a president or wanted to vote for someone. And she died 2 days before she got her ballot. And we prosecuted her. But I haven't seen any prosecution of the mail truck that was found dumping ballots in a garbage bin. So when we talk about election integrity and related bills, we need to make sure that we as a people in this state come together and we decide what is voter integrity, and we work together to make sure that we can sustain voter integrity here in our state. Security, being able to propose, I think these things are great. And I think, yes, I support voter integrity. I support any bill that's going to be able to make our voting process the way it was actually written when we started voting. When African Americans, Negroes started voting, and then women were able to start to vote. Now all people can vote. We owe it to our United States and to our state to make sure that that voting practice that we have implemented all of these years support the people that are doing the voting.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, do you believe that Arizona's election systems are secure?
Well, certainly they are not secure. And the basic problem with the voting system in Arizona is the Democratic Party. The people need to vote the Democrats out of power who will not allow a decent election. When I voted in the last election, I was given a ballot with the bleed through pen. And I immediately discovered that the pen was bleeding through, but the person I gave the ballot to told me that they would take care of it and it wouldn't be a problem. Later, we found out that those ballots were invalidated.
Mr. Bowers, I'd like to point out that theory had been disproven by both the manufacturer, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office.
Well, that might be, sir, but I observed it myself.
No,
It was not, it did happen, just the way I said.
The county recorder's office has said that the ballots were printed offset, so even if bleed through occurred, it wasn't going to affect a vote on the other side of the ballot paper.
Well, it's not true, sir. And I'm telling you, I saw it myself.
Okay. Continue, please, with your answer.
Well, I think that the problem with the voting is going to destroy this nation. If we don't have elections that the people can trust, then our nation is finished as a republic. This is the most important issue that's currently extant in this country, is how we can restore our elections. I'm not sure we can, and I'm not sure that it will be done. The fact of the matter is that after the 2020 election, every division of government refused to investigate the elections.
We had a 3-month.
Excuse me, sir, I'm still answering.
I'm just like, it's my job, sir, it's my job as moderator to fact check.
The court system ruled that Texas didn't have standing. The Supreme Court refused to get involved. The legislatures did not get involved.
The Arizona State Senate did conduct a very long audit, sir.
Yes, and then nothing happened because nothing was done.
They found no proof of widespread fraud, sir. What would you say to?
Well, that's your conclusion, sir. I disagree with that. I think
that was the conclusion of the folks who ran the.
Well, you know, as a moderator, sir, you're supposed to be neutral. And for you to state that there was no fraud in the 2020 election is taking a strong stand on an issue. You're supposed to be a neutral moderator.
I'm stating the conclusions reached by the folks in the audit presentation that I attended in the Arizona State Senate.
Well, I suggest you resign as moderator, sir, if you're not going to be neutral. Is there anyone else there can take your place?
No, sorry.
What about Jessica Painter? Is she there?
It's just me, sir. So if you'd like to continue, otherwise I can move to the next question. I'm sorry, we have a train that runs by at the Capitol here. So that is what the honk you'll hear in the background is. I'll ask the next question, then I'll mute myself so the train stops with the interruption. Sorry about that. All right, yesterday, Politico published a Supreme Court opinion indicating the court could overturn Roe v. Wade, which would return power to regulate abortions back to state legislatures. So the question for you is, what if in what situations, if any, do you believe abortions should be legal? And I'll go. Yeah, Mr. Bowers, you can start.
Well, I regard abortion as a form of murder, and I don't support it under any conditions. Now, you generally hear the statement made that abortion is justified to save the life of the mother. I've been told that there is no medical condition in which it's necessary to kill a baby to save the life of the mother. If that is the case, if the mother's life is in danger, yes, of course, abortion might be indicated. But I'm not certain that those conditions actually exist.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Jackson.
There is a Negro spiritual that is sung. The song goes, sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child a long way from home. That song was written because there were slaves that would take their children, their babies, after being raped. And rather for the child to go through slavery, they would drown their babies. And that song, that's the reason why that song was actually written. To me, God gave us 10 commandments, and he didn't give us 9. Murder is murder. God said, thou shalt not kill. Every person that I know that attends a church that is of a Christian nature believes in the 10 commandments. So if there are 10 commandments, I don't think anyone can stand and say there are only 9. That's what I feel. I feel that I will support the right to life from conception to natural death. And when I say that, there are also senior citizens who actually want, sometimes they want to be, or they have an injury or illness and they actually want to die. They want people to actually kill them. But again, I say there are 10 commandments. There are not 9 commandments. And that what they did, they never should have, because they forgot that God knew us before we were born, as this is written. And that's all I have to say.
Thank
I
you.
hope I answered the question.
Thank
And sorry that I threw in, but when you said that, that song came into my mind.
That's fine. It's your time. We're gonna move on to education now. And we touched on this a bit with the question about Prop 208 and the tax, but do you believe Arizona's K through 12 public education system is adequately funded? And Ms. Jackson, you can start that one.
When you say adequately funded, I have to think of my own classroom, that when I do labs, I have to go out in the hall and get water because there's no water in my classroom. I'm the wrong person to ask that question for it to be neutral. Our classrooms are not adequately funded. That's because money is given to given into our educational system, but it's not evaluated and audited in that system. There's a trickle down effect that as a legislator, we need to look to make sure that when money is given, when Governor Ducey put $11 million into a budget for education, we need to be able to evaluate and assess and audit where that $11 million is going. So no, I do not feel that it is, I don't think we need any more money to be put into the educational system. I think we need to appropriate where that money is going, how it's being used, and audit it for the purpose of which it is being used. And being a teacher, being in education for 28 years, I have seen a lot. And I know every fall, you can count the number of teachers going to Office Max and other places, Walmart, filling carts with educational materials for their children that are coming from a paycheck that they don't receive. People think teachers get paid in the summer. No, they do not get paid in the summer unless they're teaching summer school. But you'll see them with those carts, collecting things for their classrooms. And if you see this, and you see this all the time, you have parents and grandparents that were teachers that have done it. The teachers are doing it now. Then you know that there is something wrong. It is not adequately inducive to education and to teaching. But this is something that we can do. Appropriation of funds. I worked on the education committee in the Tallahassee, Florida, and I also worked with the Governor Bush, and we appropriated money. All states aren't having this problem. So the appropriation of money, the appropriation committee and the education committee with strength can start putting some bills that will actually help and support where this money is going, how it's being audited.
Thanks, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowers, same question. Do you believe that K through 12 education is adequately funded?
You know, I have not been inside a school classroom in 50 years. So I have no idea what's going on in the school system. And I will rely on a subject matter expert like Jana to answer questions of that nature. And I hope that the people who are watching this presentation are beginning to notice what a wonderful candidate Jana Jackson is for this position. I certainly hope that people of District 4 send her down to the House. Thank you.
All right. Moving, sorry, find our next question here. Survey respondents, I'm sorry if you can't hear me again, we've got the train coming again. Survey respondents in a poll conducted by Clean Elections regularly cited prescription drug prices as a major political concern for their households. What state actions do you think could help alleviate these costs? And Mr. Bowers, we'll start with you.
You know, it's 10 minutes before this thing is over. Am I ever going to get to talk about the criminal justice system and the prisons?
I am going off of a list of questions that came from the voters, sir. So I don't see one on here that addresses that. You're more than welcome to address it in your closing statement, and I can give you a few.
And how long is the closing statement?
I was planning on giving both of you 3, since it's just the 2 of you, 3 minutes.
Okay.
So,
What is this question?
This was a question about concerns about high prescription drug prices and what state actions you could help rein those in.
I don't have any answer to that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jackson, do you have a response?
Thank you. Ken, I'm also going to yield some of my time on my closing statement. I should only take 30 seconds and I
Okay, I'll
will
make a
yield the
note of
rest of
that.
that time to you. When it talks about drug programs, what I want to say, it's not just our drugs. Right now, and by you being a reporter, you can also maybe even talk about this subject. But right now, there is a call on Similac milk formula for babies. There is the Similac, for some reason, there was something that was contaminated, so they called it. Now, babies have to take Enfamil. Well, Enfamil right now is a shortage in our state. So when we talk about the drug program, there's a WIC program also. In WIC, parents cannot get the large containers of Enfamil because it won't pay for it. So this program was established so that we could actually help make sure that infants get the right kind of formula, because there were so many children in the 1950s that became mentally ill because parents giving them water instead of milk. That's the reason why WIC was actually started. So it's not just the drugs. People that are diabetic are going to be diabetic. And that therefore those drugs are it's a life-saving drug. So yes, I think that we need to look at these drug programs. We need to look at how we are going to give a hand up and not a hand out to people that are in need. The drugs for senior citizens, when they are no longer working, have increased, whereas when they're working and they had that insurance, it was a decrease. At my age now, I am taking more medication than I have ever taken, even if it's looking at taking calcium, which is a vitamin to help strengthen my bones. So I am very, very much in favor of looking at how we in the state of Arizona prepare our people that are taking drugs that are life-threatening drugs, that are life-saving drugs. And also programs like a WIC program, making sure that we also have milk for our babies. So that's my answer. Maybe some of my time can be given to Ken.
Yeah, I've made a note of that when we do closing, I'll give Ken a few extra minutes to talk about that topic he wants to address.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have a few more questions here and then we'll get to closing. This is another voter question that's health related. A voter has asked that as a voter who has identified themselves as a person with a long-term illness, do you support medical aid in dying to alleviate pain at the end of life? And Ms. Jackson, we'll start with you on that.
Right now, it's really strange. People took marijuana when I was in high school. I went to the worst high school in the city of Chicago. As a reporter, you can research this. I attended Inglewood High School on Stewart in Chicago. And when you do the research for that, you'll find out that you have more drug-related incidents in the entire state. When people are at that point in which they are passing, they should pass so that we are giving them whatever assistance they need. When people go into surgery, we actually give them all kinds of medications to make sure they don't feel the cutting of their skin or the digging into their bladder or into their stomach. So when we think about people that are living and they are at that stage of passing away, my father died of thyroid cancer. I saw the suffering from thyroid cancer. I saw what it did to his body. I saw what it did to his voice. I was there with him holding his hand. And the medications that they gave to him through his vein, to me, was a life-saving that my father could rest before he had to rest in peace. So I am very much in making sure that we make our patients as comfortable as possible when they are passing away. And if whatever that is that's going to make them comfortable, a medical person would have to give me the advice as to what medical types of drugs that we would be able to say, yes, we need to fight for. So I hope that makes sense. Just coming from my background, because I do not have a medical background. I would like to be able to make sure that those that are passing will pass as comfortable as possible. And for people out there, voters, if they have had anyone in their family to die of COVID, then they know that even something that is such as COVID, not even cancer, But COVID, if they had children, they need to make sure that when they pass away, they want them to be as comfortable as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowers, would you like to respond to the question?
Yes, I would. We would not treat a dog or a horse the way we treat a cancer patient in this country. A person who has cancer endures incredible pain. I knew an individual who had throat cancer and could not swallow food and was given four different medications for pain. Not one of them was worth a damn. Something needs to be done to change the way the doctors are afraid that this patient will end up and be addicted to heroin is what their fear is. But there needs to be something done to stop tormenting people the way we do. I'm not sure what the answer is, but something has to change.
Thank you. All right, we'll do one more question, then we'll go to the closing statements. Staying on the medical topic, looking back at the last 2 years of COVID-19, how do you believe the Arizona government managed the pandemic? And Mr. Bowers, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't really, I'm not sure what to say about that. I know that the pandemic in hospitals was absolutely atrocious the way it was handled. If you went into a hospital, no matter how badly sick you were, your family was excluded. Your wife could not go with you into an emergency. Even a patient that was passing away, they wouldn't let them in. And this was done not by the government. Governor Ducey's statements specifically excluded hospitals from being covered by his announcement of the mask and exclusion. But the hospitals took it up and pretended that it applied to them. No, I think the pandemic situation has been a very badly handled in Arizona.
Thank you. And Ms. Jackson, same question.
You know, people do the best they can at the time in which they are doing it. We had polio, and there was a time when everybody was scared of polio, and people just went on and tried to do the best they could. I think the research for handling the COVID could have been better. But the people that tried, I truly believe, here in the state of Arizona, I am not talking about the United States, but here in Arizona, I think people tried to do their best. The educational system here in Arizona, the superintendents and the people that worked with the children and the families, I think they tried to do their best. I don't think they knew what they were doing, but they were intuitively doing their best. Could we have done a better job? I think so.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the closing statements. I know Ms. Jackson had noted she'd like to donate some time to Mr. Bowers, so I will allow Ms. Jackson to go first, and then Mr. Bowers will give you 5 minutes for your close.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Ms. Jackson, would you like to start?
Yes. I'd like to thank all of the voters that have listened to us. I need your help. I need your vote. I want to be a representative that serves the people, that serves you. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I'm going to be speaking at the Scottsdale Worship Center on Cactus, 68th and Cactus. And I'll invite you to come to the Scottsdale Worship Center and listen to me speak. I'm going to be speaking on some topics, and I think if you just want to get to know me, if you want to hear me, you are welcome. My name is Jana Jackson. My website is www.janajacksonaz.org. I have a foundation. The foundation is www.janajackson4kids.org, which stands for Knowledge, Integrity, Discipline, and Spirituality, in which I do free space camps and camps for children in the summer, and then I teach during the school year. I'm very, very honored to be a part of what you are doing. Please elect me to be one of your state representatives. You'll have 2 votes, and I'm asking if you will give me one of those votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, Mr. Bowers.
Thank you to the incomparable Jana Jackson, and I hope that you will give one of your votes to me and one of your votes to her. Um, if you have a young man in your life, let's say he's 18 or 19 years old, what is it that you want him to do with his life to keep him on track? Well, you want him to get some education. You want him to find some kind of a job. In America, almost any job is enough. You want him to meet a nice girl and get married. You want him to join a church. You want him to serve in the military if need be. And you want in his parents' old age, you want him to take care of his mother and father. That's what basically the 6 things you want a young man to do. What happens to an 18-year-old or 19-year-old boy who commits an economic offense? Let's say he steals a car in Arizona. Now, I grant you, stealing a car is a serious crime. It has a serious effect on the victims. But what happens to this economic victim? Suppose he gives some smart mouth to the judge or to the police. Giving smart mouth in this country is virtually the worst thing you can do. It's virtually the worst crime. You can go to jail longer for smart mouth than you can for murder in some cases. The first thing that happens to an 18 or 19-year-old boy when he arrives in the Arizona State Prison is that he's fronted by a group of 2 or 3 of his own race, and they say, we want you to join our gang and we'll protect you. If that young man joins that gang, the next statement is start paying dues. Get money from your parents and start paying us to be a member of our gang. And also, we want you to prove your loyalty to the gang by beating up that fellow over there tonight. And don't go too far with it. Just put a lock in the sock and whack him a few times. And if things get out of hand, we'll be around to protect you and make sure you don't get hurt. So if the young man refuses to join the gang, he's the one that gets beat up that night in the bathroom. Now, our young man who stole a car starts off as a young man who we want to be a patriotic and loyal American. By the time he gets out of prison, he's going to be a bitter and angry thug for the rest of his life. And all of this is for stealing a car. Now, under my plan, we would stop sending nonviolent people to prison. It's the British who started this system of sending nonviolent people or hanging them, because they were a monarchy and they had a class of person that they wanted to persecute. Under my plan, nonviolent people would pay a fine to the state, which would help to pay for the prison system, and restitution to their victim. You know, they don't pay restitutions to their victim under our current system. It's up to the victim to hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit against a criminal who's stolen their car. And that generally doesn't happen. Under my system, the convicted car thief would have to pay restitution for what he has done to his victim and a fine to the state. Now, there's a lot of things wrong with our prison system, not just the fact that nonviolent people go to prison. There are actually people in prison who have done nothing wrong at all. And I was in a position to know because I was a classification officer for 4 years. And I was able to review the court records for inmates that, in my view, of course, had done nothing wrong at all, but they were in prison for, in one case, there's a young man doing life in prison, a Vietnam combat veteran of Vietnam, doing life in prison for a series of events that I take position is no one's business but his own. We also, the prisons don't, like I said earlier, we don't have compressive air conditions. We have evaporative air conditions that work very poorly in Arizona. But in addition to that, the prisons don't have water supplies that come from a municipal water supply. They have their own wells and their own pumps and their own electric motors driving the pumps. Those systems are all manned by correctional officers. And they're not trained to deal with equipment like that. The equipment fails on a regular basis. And when it fails, the water system fails, the evaporative air conditioner stops working. But we still keep them in their jail cells overnight and during much of the day. In the summer in Arizona, it's hell. It's an atrocious situation.
We're coming up on 5 minutes, so you can close
Well,
out.
like I say, there are other things wrong in Arizona. Do you know that our correctional officers are required to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for an inmate who's having breathing difficulty, despite the fact that inmates, 70% of them have hepatitis? Now, how would you like to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on an inmate that's got hepatitis? Not very much. We can change, the state legislature can change that by making the standard of care for resuscitation of an inmate to be the Sylvester back pressure arm lift method that's actually superior to the mouth to mouth. But it's illegal as the ways things stand now. By working in the prison system for 20 years, I know of the things that are wrong. There's a lot more that I don't have time to talk about. In a situation like this, I've been here an hour. I get to talk for 5 minutes about what I really know about, and I'm being asked questions about tax.
I apologize, Mr.
I know
Bowers.
nothing about.
These are the questions that the voters wanted answers to. So that's who this is a forum for.
Okay, let me go down to the State House and start changing the system to stop sending our young men. We have women in prison for prostitution in Arizona. What are they doing there? Why are they in prison?
All right, Mr. Bowers, we've reached our time limit, so I'm gonna have to stop you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you to all our viewers watching. This concludes our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. And to the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the August 2nd primary election. As a reminder, the voter registration deadline is July 5th, and early voting begins on July 6th. All registered voters, including independent voters, can participate in the primary. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you.
Thank you.